Hello and welcome to Tolve Closes with myself, Amanda Tolve, your residential realtor. I service Bergen County, Passaic County, Hudson County, parts of Hudson County, and Essex County, and also parts of Morris County. My job is to make sure that the specific needs of my buyers and sellers are met. And it's my job to guide them from the very beginning of the home buying or selling process to the very end. Now, last week I discussed types of maintenance to look for when you're searching for your home. The cost and upkeep of that is going to depend on the size of your home and also the location of your home. And it's very important to pay attention to those details because you'll have to worry about them in the long run. And other important details to look at when you're searching for your home is what you'll need for homeowners insurance. So some homes should be equipped with certain items to protect their homes or their property during storms or floods or natural disasters or accidents. There's a lot of things that go into it, and that's not my specialty. Of course, I know the general, but today I brought on a professional homeowners insurance agent to help us better understand what we should be looking for when we're home searching, as far as things that will protect our home, and also how far the coverage will go compared to, general, or maybe the different kinds of coverages you have to get in different, depending on where you live. And like, maybe you're in a flood zone, maybe you're in, a place where there's tornadoes, different things like that. Of course, we focus on New Jersey, but it's good to hear all kinds of storms, because we did almost have I guess they called it almost a tornado in New Jersey a couple weeks ago. It was just a really bad storm though. So I would like to welcome Chris Januski. And if you want to introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you very much for inviting me on today, Amanda. My name is Chris Januski. I'm from the Wasisco Agency. We are in New York, but we're licensed in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We're a property and casualty insurance agency, family owned and operated, first opened in 1963. So for home, in regards to personal lines, we can write everything from home, auto, umbrella, condos, co-ops, renters, and then on commercial, we can cover all your commercial insurance needs also. So I just want to say thank you, Amanda, for inviting me on. And I'd love to discuss some things to look at when purchasing a home and what to consider when it comes to insurance.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to ask exactly that. What are some of the things, that you should be looking for when we're doing the home search? This way I can better help my clients, and then they know what to look for as well.
All right. So I got a list here of things so when you first purchase a home, the insurance company has 60 days to cancel insurance, and they've got a list of what they can do during those first 60 days. After 60 days, basically the insurance company, the state has said that they've had their time, to do an inspection, to do any background research they want. After that, they can really only cancel for non-payment up until renewal. So during that 60 days, though, they're most likely going to send an inspector out to look at the home. And there's a lot of things that they're going to look at, well, mainly externally, but they may do an internal inspection depending on what they deem is necessary for the purchase. So here's just a few of the things that the insurance companies are looking at and to keep in mind when you're looking at. So the roof. An asphalt roof, if this looks like a lot of damage or there's mildew or mold or something on there, they may say that needs to be replaced. Now, if you're considered a coastal community, some insurance companies won't even write a policy if the roof is less than 15 years old. Now, if it's inspected and you have a roofing contractor that can sign off saying that the roof is still in good condition, the company may be able to go past the 15 years. And it's important to keep that in mind. Nowadays, some people have like a 30 or 40-year warranty on their roof. And let's say it's 20 years old and they have a 40-year warranty. The roof's still good for another 20 years. And the insurance company understands that. So as long as you have the documentation, you may be able to get that. Externally, stairs and decks. If there's any rot or mildew and a slipping or tripping hazard, that's something that could raise concerns. Another thing with decks is railings. So I had a client that purchased a home and it was an older deck and they had a horizontal railing on their deck, which it was grandfathered into local code. They weren't required to have the vertical spindles. But the insurance company said for coverage, they require those spindles every 4 inches so that nobody can fall through. So it all depends on, even though legally they didn't have to upgrade it per the town, the insurance company required it because they're covering the liability. If somebody were to fall and they would sue you, the insurance company is on the hook. Another, a lot of this is external things that they're looking at. Sidewalks, if there's any cracked or raised sidewalk, if the home itself looks like it needs to be painted or there's rotted wood. I've seen debris, overgrown trees and shrubs, and not just the overgrown, but I had one company where there was a tree within about 5 feet from the house, and the insurance company required the tree to be taken down because if the wind were to blow, like you said, Amanda, a tornado or something comes through and that tree goes directly onto the home, the insurance company is then having to pay that claim.
I did have a question on that, actually, the
Yes.
trees. What if the tree is not actually on your property, it's on someone else's property, but it falls on your home? Is that, you're still protected by that, or?
So if it's somebody else's tree, if it happens to your home, typically your own home insurance is going to cover it.
Okay.
The insurance company may be able to go after the owner, but it's complicated. The only way they can do that is if they can prove that the owner knew that the tree was rotting and it was in bad condition. If it was a tornado that came through or some strong storm, there was nothing wrong with the tree. Mother Nature just took it down. That's why you have insurance for yourself.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Now, if we have to do it, if the insurance company wants to do an internal inspection, there's a few things that they're looking at. How the housekeeping around the furnace and boiler and the electrical panel. I had somebody bought a house and they had an electrical panel. All the breakers were good in it. There was 1 or 2 breakers where they had an electrician come in and there was open slots, but the panel itself was rusted from really damp basement. And the company required the panel to be upgraded, even though there wasn't anything physically wrong. The potential was there for an electrical fire.
So sometimes they'll require things to be updated, even if they see that it's something that could be dangerous or it's going to be a problem. Right.
Correct. And then the age of the utilities is important. So the age of a furnace, some companies won't write if the furnace is over 30 years old, if there's lead pipes, if there's old
I know that one, the lead or copper pipes. Yeah, they want copper, right?
Right, they want copper, or the plastic, the PEX nowadays.
Okay.
Also, the old screw-in fuses. A lot of companies won't write for that, or from the 1930s, the knob and tube wiring. They want everything all updated. And then if it's an older home, they may write insurance for it, but they'll exclude lead paint. So if there's lead poisoning, the insurance company won't cover that.
Right.
So those are things specifically to the home to think about. If you're purchasing a home and they're doing an inspection, they want you to live there within 30 days. If you're not living there within 30 days, they consider it a vacant property. And that's not a homeowner's insurance policy. It would be a separate policy. So they could require you to move in or make you write it separately as a vacant property. So when doing the home inspection, that's a lot of the things, or when you're walking through, it's just something to keep in mind. And now with all of these, if the insurance company writes you a letter and says, we're going to cancel because of this, this, and this, they're going to give you a list of things that they don't like. That doesn't mean that it's canceled that day. It means that you're going to be given at least 30 days to correct it. Okay. So it's not make or break like, oh my gosh, I got this and they're canceling tomorrow. No, they're telling you that here's what needs to be remedied. You have a time frame. And as long as you work with the underwriter or the insurance company to address the issues, a lot of them are very flexible. It's when you just say, I'm not fixing that, then they're like, well, you're not going to have coverage.
Right. So most of the time, do you see that the insurance companies will come out and inspect the property, or is it something where you just give them all the information?
So and this isn't just a new purchase, it's whenever you get a new policy. Sometimes somebody has a home and they would just want to switch companies. Within the last year with COVID, there's less inspections going on.
That's what I figured.
But typically the insurance company they have a third party that's all they do is inspections. So they call up the inspection company and they'll send somebody out. and they do a percentage of their home, the percentage of new policies. So you're rolling the dice. If you know that there's something wrong and you're like, maybe they won't inspect, you're right. Maybe they won't inspect.
You're also risking that you're not going to have that covered as well if something
Correct.
happens. So that's not
Correct.
smart.
Yeah, I mean, if you're typically the largest purchase the typical person makes is their home. Make sure it's covered right.
For sure. I think you covered a lot of the stuff, but I did have a couple other ones more on the flooding because we did recently have that big storm. So I know, and I spoke to you previously about this, the sump pumps. Is there anything else that people should be looking for in their homes? If they're in a flood zone, that would better protect, and help them as far as insurance.
Sure. So the sump pump itself, make sure it has a battery backup. And then the home, if it's waterproofed from the outside, even if there's a lot of water in the soil, you won't get that leaching through your foundation. When they waterproof from the outside, they put this like tar material and plastic on the foundation, and it really seals it. The other option is you can waterproof it from the inside. They have special paints that you can put on the foundation, but if you can get it from the outside, and so they can do proper drainage around the house and waterproofing it, it really prevents the water from ever leaching through the wall.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even know that you could do that. So that's good. Definitely good to know, especially for the people who are in flood zones and then just people who are concerned, for storms.
Right. Now flood insurance, I mean, the majority of people that were affected from this storm Ida that came through a couple weeks ago are not in a floodplain. They're not required to have flood insurance. By definition, you only need to have flood insurance if you have a mortgage and you live in a floodplain. Outside of that, you're not required to. It's wise to have it. So, in price ranges, I live nowhere near water. I quoted my own house, and it was like $500 for the year for coverage. The maximum coverage you can get is $250,000 for the house and $100,000 for your personal property. It was like $500 a year. I quoted somebody else in the South Shore of Long Island. It was $8,000 a year.
Wow.
Right. So it's
like I always say, it's location and size of the home. It's big on the location because it depends what zone you're in.
Right. But there's, I had a couple clients that he wasn't in the flood zone, but everything in his basement. So his washer and dryer, hot water heater, and furnace were all underwater and now have to be replaced.
So was that stuff covered with his insurance or no?
No, not at all.
So that was another question I wanted to ask. The general, the general policy that people get, you know more about that than I do, but is there any type of flood in that, or what do you recommend people add to it if there is nothing?
So the definition of flood, the homeowner's insurance does not cover flood at all.
Okay.
So that you're required to have a separate flood policy. Now, flood could be something as little as water on two adjacent properties could be definition of a flood. So if you have, when all the rain come down and you have flash flooding where it covers, let's say, the street, and it's all this water coming down that gets in your basement, the insurance company could say, well, that's a flood and we're not going to cover it. They also could, if you have water, what I've seen also is somebody had a sump pump with they did not have a battery backup, but the property lost power during the storm, and then they have water damage.
Okay.
Then the insurance company could look at that as, if you have coverage for water backup and sump pump failure, you may have coverage. It depends on how.
Not like an additional coverage that you add. Okay.
It is, and there's different dollar amounts. Anybody with any type of finished basement or lower level should really consider adding this onto their policy. It normally starts like $10,000 coverage, and then you can go as high as you can go pretty high, 50, 60,000 if you need to. But even if you have 2 inches of water that gets in that basement and some pump fails, you're talking about all the carpeting, all the subflooring, all the sheetrock, if it got high enough to get into the sheetrock, and then the mold remediation and getting it dried out and fixed before repairing it all. having that endorsement on the policy that water backup and sump pump failure has potential to give you coverage for all of that. Otherwise, the typical homeowner's policy does not.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing I really wanted to ask, because I know a lot of people are concerned about that because they just assume that this is all covered, but it's not. So it's good to know the endorsements that you can add to it. Another one that might be an endorsement. What about if people have pools?
So it's not necessarily an endorsement. The insurance company just wants to know about it.
Okay.
But there are specific requirements where they want a fence around the pool, and they want a self-latching gate.
Okay.
They want to know if there's a ladder that's removable or not. And all of this is just from an insurance standpoint, because they're liable if somebody else were to come in and God forbid something happens. The insurance company at the end of the day is the one paying out that bill. So they want to know what they're covering, and the gate and the self-locking mechanism are the two biggest things that they're concerned about.
Okay. And that obviously varies whether it's like a difference between above ground pool or in ground, because mostly in New Jersey we have above ground pools.
Right. So they would want the yard itself to have some type of fence around at least the yard, if not the pool also.
Okay. Okay. So those are important things to know too. What else did I want to ask? We covered the trees. Oh, I also wanted to ask about fire. So is fire in general covered? And then I had some more specific questions because so many people do like the fire pits in their backyard now. Like what if a fire breaks out in the backyard? Or even grills or things like that. Like what does the homeowner's insurance cover everything outside, or like just as far as,
So
what do you guys do?
fire itself, homeowners insurance covers fire. Now, if you're cooking outside and something happens and it's an accident and the house were to catch fire, yes, your homeowner's insurance does cover that.
Okay.
If it was arson, obviously not. But yeah, as long as it's an accident, I mean, you hear the horror stories about somebody using a turkey fryer and the turkey's still
Right.
frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a gas grill, or like you said, the fire pit. That if it's accidental, yes. Now I would recommend, if you're going to have any of those, a bare minimum 10 feet away from the home, more if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have coverage for those.
Is there anything as far as those? I mean, obviously it's good to have them on cement or a patio. Is there any other ways to be preventative for any fires to happen with fire pits in the backyard and grills?
With the fire pits themselves, if you can, they have the screen cover to prevent any sparks or ashes from really
Right.
flying
Okay.
out.
Mhm.
And then just distance away from the home. If you have either, like you said, on a patio, if you have to do it in the grass, something, no dry material around it.
Okay.
Just common sense, something, if it's autumn and there's tons of leaves on the ground,
Yeah.
you might want to take a blower or a rake or something and clear the area before you have any open flames.
Right. That's smart.
Now in regards to the fires though, that is one of the something that insurance companies look at. So I've got somebody that I'm quoting in upstate New York. It's a rural area, and I have to fill out a separate application and actually call the local fire department to make sure that they have coverage for that house and how much is available. Like how many trucks can they get there and how much water is available, because fires, the number, when you're looking at what could happen to a home, fires, the absolute, could destroy everything, burn to the ground, lose everything. That's the number one, the largest loss possible. So depending on where you are and what type of community you're in, if you have a volunteer fire department, it's not a paid department, or if you don't have fire hydrants in your neighborhood, that some companies won't write it, or you're going to pay a little higher price because of it.
Right. And that's again why when we're home searching, we have to look at those type of things, because if you're in the suburbs, or or you're in a more urban area, you probably have more easy access. But if you're out into the rural areas, then we have to look and see, is your home fireproof, or how long it's going to take them to get there, and then is your insurance policy going to be more, is it going to be able to cover you? So those are really good points. I did have, you answered the one question I was going to ask. I was going to say, what's the, the biggest claim, and that's fire, I guess.
Well, and it's interesting because the largest claim is fire. The most frequent claim is water.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So if a pipe breaks, something leaks inside the house and causes damage within the house. Now, typically it's not going to destroy the entire house, but you figure if you're on the first floor and you have a basement underneath, let's say that water line to your ice maker breaks and you
Right.
don't know it, and it's leaking and leaking and leaking, and then you see that the basement ceiling fell down. And now you see that the floor underneath the refrigerator is completely destroyed. The ceiling in the basement is destroyed. Everything on the floor underneath. So water is definitely the most frequent. Now there's a lot of cool devices out nowadays. They're water sensors that you can get installed, and some insurance companies give you a discount for having it. So there's a valve that goes where the water line comes into the house.
Mhm.
And then you have sensors like underneath the sink or where the most potential place for a leak. And if the sensor trips by sensing water, it shuts off the water supply to the house.
That's pretty
And
cool. I'm taking notes, by the way.
yeah, no problem. But it minimizes the amount of damage. And so some insurance companies, they'll give you a discount by having that because it's a proactive measure. There might still be a break in the water line somewhere, but if you're not home for a weekend and it breaks, the damage is a lot smaller than if it was going for 2 or 3 days straight.
Or a week if you're going on vacation.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, there was something else I was so since we're in, we get the all 4 seasons here in the winter, is there any insurance claims that you see more in the winter? And is there anything that we should be looking for in homes as far as winterizing?
So when there's yes. The short answer, yeah. It's called an ice dam, or what happens is when you have a lot of snow on your roof and it starts to melt and then it gets to the gutters and it freezes. And then you can get water backed up underneath, like if this is the gutter, it'll come up underneath the gutter, underneath their shingles and get into your attic, and then it can actually pour down the inside wall of your house. So there's a couple different ways to prevent that. They have like heat trace that you can put on your roof, or just being properly insulated in the attic. It doesn't allow that heat to come out of the house and then heat up the roof to melt that snow.
So we should be looking for proper insulation for sure when we're looking at homes. And again, back to the roof, we should be looking to make sure that the roof was done by a good contractor and that we're not going to have any of those issues with leaks.
Right. And with the newer one, like the code now for doing roofs, they have this material that they put underneath, like the first 3 to 6 feet. It specifically prevents those ice dams. Basically, it's it's like this rubberized material that they put down underneath the shingles to prevent all that water from coming in.
And is that something standard, or is that something that you can add on?
From what I understand, most contractors do it per code now. Like that's required for the bottom portion.
That's good. That's great.
Yes.
They help with the snow.
And along with that, and wherever snow or ice melts, if the water has potential to go towards the house instead of away from the house, that's where you have potentially water coming in. So if you have a driveway, if you live on a hill and the driveway comes down, and you have all this snow that melts in your driveway and goes into your garage or into a sliding glass door or some type of opening to the house, that's where, just things to keep in mind. If your house in the summer, you're like, oh, this is beautiful.
Right.
You haven't seen it in all 4 seasons. Just things to think about what you may have to deal with when the season does change.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up, because people are excited about things when they see it beautiful in the summer, or even vice versa. And then it's like, well, you have to think about how that's going to be during all 4 seasons.
Right.
And then you did mention the driveway. So does insurance change depending on how, I guess, if the driveway is slanted, that's going to cost you more? Or does it matter? Because
not typically. Yeah, thank God it doesn't. No, when they write the policy, they'll look at the grade of the land, but it's not going to have a huge impact on the premium that you're paying.
Okay, that's good to know too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think a couple other things that just looking at my notes here, other things to keep in mind if you're a first-time home buyer or getting new homeowners insurance. The pets, a lot,
Okay.
some insurance companies exclude specific breeds of dog.
Mm,
So if you have a dog and it bites somebody and they sue you, your insurance company may not be able to cover that, or they may exclude it. Also, they consider it exotic animals, ferrets and snakes. And, you know, some people may say, that's just my pet. And they're like, well, according to the insurance company, that's an exotic animal and specifically excluded, excuse me.
yeah. I was actually at a fair this weekend, and they had ferrets. They were walking around with their pet ferrets.
Right?
I was like, what? But I guess it's
So,
an exotic animal. I don't know.
right. Other things, if you are living near the coast, sometimes it's harder to get homeowners insurance near the coast because of, being near the coast. Like I was talking about the flood insurance. You may have to get specific, they may have exclusions that are different than a typical homeowner's policy. Like I've seen one where they specifically exclude wind coverage, meaning that if there's a storm and your siding or something happens, where the roof gets blown off or siding is removed or a hurricane comes through and all the wind is causing the damage, you don't have coverage for that. Now, it's just something, again, based on location and availability, something to keep in mind before
So
you
is
get to
that
closing.
something you can add, or they just won't cover it?
They won't cover it. Well, some companies won't cover it all near the coast, or if they do, you're going to be paying an exorbitant amount of money.
Okay, yeah, because I have real estate in Florida too, and there they do a wind mitigation test or something like
Right,
that for the insurance. They don't do that in New Jersey. So it
right,
depends again where you're going to. Yeah.
exactly. All right.
I mean,
That's
you
all
covered all of
mine.
my questions.
Awesome. Well,
So that was great. And then I did want to walk away with, so we did speak about one of the additional coverages, but if you could recommend 3 additional coverages for people to, or endorsements, as you would say, to add to your regular policy that people don't think of, that they're gonna basically need, maybe if an accident or something, or a storm or something occurs.
all right. So the first thing is when you look at your dwelling, right? When you buy a homeowner's insurance, you're going to pay for the cost of the dwelling. Most companies allow you to buy 125% of that, meaning that if it's a total loss, example, the home costs $500,000 and it's a total loss, and it was insured for what the insurance company said it was going to be 500, but it's actually costing more than 500 to replace. By having that 125% endorsement down there, they'll pay for the added costs that were unforeseen.
Okay, that's good.
Personal and advertising injury is an endorsement if somebody were to, some typically a policy covers injury, right? So bodily injury, slip and fall, somebody gets hurt. Personal and advertising is libel or slander, or you make as long as it's not intentional, but somebody sues you for something you said, this would cover you. And specifically to think about if you have children and they're on the internet and they say something about a company or say something, you are vicariously liable for your children. So if your child says something about a company negatively online and you end up getting sued for it, you could be held liable. By having this on your homeowner's insurance, you may have coverage for that.
I didn't even know you could add something like that. That's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
What other things? So water backup is the biggest one.
Yeah, the water backup was the big one.
And then jewelry. So like there's certain limits where you think you have coverage for all of this stuff, and then they say that, well, if it's stolen, you only have $2,500 worth of coverage for jewelry, or a certain number for silverware or weapon like firearms. So if you have it's good to sit down with your agent, talk about what you actually have to make sure the policy covers everything you have.
Right. So like as far as whether it was stolen or if it was like burned in the fire or if it
Right.
was, damaged in the or lost in the flood, whatever. So that would be difference of what's covered and what's not.
Right. Specifically, so theft, jewelry's the theft coverage for jewelry is limited.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. And
and
that
then
also depends where you move to, because you want to be in a safe location where there's no crime.
but I mean, if you have very expensive jewelry, they have separate policies called a personal articles policy, which is going to provide more coverage than a typical homeowner's. It'll give you worldwide coverage for things like accidentally losing it, and it would still provide coverage for that. Where it wasn't stolen, you just don't know what happened to it. You can't prove that it was stolen. There's no police report, but you don't own it, you don't have it anymore. Your personal article policy could cover that.
Okay, and then we have a question from Phil here. What if, and this is a good, ooh, whoops, I pushed the wrong button. This is a good one for right now because a lot of people are working from home. So what about if you're working from home? What does homeowners insurance cover any type of your business? And like when you're searching for a home, is it okay that it's just an additional bedroom, or should it be actually a separate office, or does that matter?
So talk to your agent, because there is possibility that you'll have coverage. If it's just a home-based business, and you're running an office where you're not going to have people coming in and out, you're just
Right.
working from home.
Okay.
Most insurance companies will allow coverage for that, and you can actually add coverage on for the items the business owns, your computer, your desk, all of that.
Okay.
But it's important to have it, to find out before something happens. You don't want something to happen and then after the fact, be like, oh, by the way, I had this business in my home.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Having
sure.
it there, but
Now I
having
have
that
to think if
conversation.
I put mine on there because I don't know. But yeah, that's but then it's different if, like say I work from home sometimes too. Right? I'm obviously on the road more than I am at home, but for people who maybe have I don't know, maybe someone who does eyelashes from home, they have an eyelash company and they, do it from home. So they have people coming in and out. So is there a type of insurance that protects them and their home?
It would be, they would have to get a separate policy for the business, most likely, where it
Oh,
would be the business policy would cover all aspects of the business. I mean, your homeowner's insurance would still cover all your stuff, but the liability aspect of the business would be covered under that business policy.
okay. But there's no specific, you could just do it in a room in your house. That doesn't matter. As
Talk to
far
your
as,
agent. It depends on what you're doing, like what
okay.
type of work you're doing, and if it can be added on or not.
Right. I'm sure you guys have a list of stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, we would talk to my underwriter and be like, all right, and they want to get into the weeds and understand what you're doing and what they're going to be potentially exposed to.
How dangerous it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right.
All right, I think that should cover everything. I mean, any other questions, you guys can contact Chris and he's happy to help you insure your home. And I'm not sure if his contact information is up there, but if not, Chris, you can just give them your phone number and email.
Sure. So it's Chris, CHRIS at Wasisco Agency. You can see the Wasisco there, wasiscoagency.com, or you can reach me in the office at 914-968-1344. Please feel free to reach out for a policy review. I'll take a look at what you have and see if we can do anything better for you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for helping us. Now we are better informed on what to look for when we're searching for our home. And also, I guess when we're selling our home too, to know what people are looking for as far as what's going to help them with their insurance policy. So thank you everyone for joining Tolve Closes today. I'm Amanda Tolve, your residential realtor, and have a great rest of your week.